distinguished guests, dear Paul van Son, and especially Cornelius Mattes, thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. I feel very honored to speak today in front of so many partners and colleagues who are so dedicated to make hydrogen to a global success story. And it's exciting to be in such a fascinating and buzzing region. I was very impressed again about what Peter Tyrium was talking about NEOM. MENA has really become a role model with its ambitious projects and open hearts and minds for partnership to tackle the climate crisis together. And that's why it's good to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really honest. I had a tough time to prepare this speech because new international development forced me to update nearly every day. And again, during the COP26 in Glasgow, there were again new news. There was a global energy crisis the last couple of weeks. At the COP yesterday, if I may quote here, new initiatives towards international standards for sustainability and net zero targets were pushed forward to push international business cases based on a common understanding what really qualifies green. Secondly, 40 governments committed themselves to the breakthrough agenda. This agenda aims to give climate neutral technology the necessary boost to bring them to market. And of course, hydrogen is one of them. And third and lastly, under the industrial deep decarbonization initiatives, the IDDI, 5 countries, including Germany and the UAE, pledged to reach net zero for steel, as we already heard, and concrete for major public construction by 2050. And this again will require a huge amount. You mentioned what you're talking about, ThyssenKrupp alone, quantities of hydrogen. The hydrogen investability index, which were published a couple of days ago, I've also to mention found that Germany is the world's best place. I doubt it's the best place, but I think it's a good place for investments in hydrogen. And so you can see there's a lot of going on around the globe regarding hydrogen. And so we're meeting here today in really times of radical change. The pressure to take action on climate change is rising while our energy system is on the brink to big changes anyway. And these changes will come fast, but they may come hard too if we can't rely on our energy supply chain to maintain fairly competitive prices. And as chairwoman of the German International Hydrogen Council, as I speak today to you here, I believe we need new partnerships to make the transition to renewables work in Germany and across the globe. Germany is aware that its responsibility for climate action extends beyond our borders. This is why our perspective on hydrogen is global too. Why the hydrogen strategy our government set out last year is international too. Decarbonizing the planet and tackling the big problems we all face is not something a country can do alone. This is not just talk. Germany is walking the talk. 2 of the 9 billion euros budgeted for scaling up the hydrogen economy will go to international projects. Europe is also reaching out across borders now that the guideline for funding projects outside the EU is finally actionable. The hydrogen economy is a puzzle with really many pieces. Currently, we're starting to puzzle the frame together, and some pieces like funding or partnerships are falling into place now. Germany's national hydrogen strategy has a good grasp on the other missing pieces. As mentioned, this strategy was passed by the German government last year. The top priority is green hydrogen for our government. Renewables are going to figure most prominently in our revamped energy system, but the transition will take time. Until then, we have to draw on another carbon-reduced options to meet demand and rapidly scale up the hydrogen economy without destabilizing the supply chains. So we also talk about blue or turquoise or orange hydrogen, maybe pink if we think about France. Germany is one of the leaders in the engineering arena. Maintaining that lead won't be easy, but we are committed to putting it into work. Finally, none of this is going to happen without imports. The German strategy acknowledges that fact and encourages new energy partnerships around the world. Our government tasked the National Hydrogen Council to help to put this strategy in place. I'm honored to be joined of some Germany's leading lights in economy, in academia, or in NGOs to pursuit of that mission. We advise the State Secretary Committee on Hydrogen, which is made up of high-ranking government officials. This shows that hydrogen has been given the priority that it deserves in the German government circle since 2020 at least. As Council, we are very vocal advocates of more ambitious goals and higher import targets. Our recently published report calls for 80 measures to ramp up the hydrogen economy in our country. These recommendations includes fast-tracking the adoption of renewables, ensuring investments in hydrogen are economically feasible, and pursuing to standardize hydrogen production and imports across the EU. Our expert opinions on regulatory schemes are widely discussed in the German Parliament, and it's good to know that our demands regularly find their ways into legislation. To give you a very recent example of our activity, one that will be of exceptional interest for you, in order to address common challenges with energy imports, we have to issue an opinion on criteria of sustainability of imported hydrogen and its derivatives. We suggested standards to be set between governments bilaterally, such as certification systems of import projects from countries outside the EU. As a guideline for private sector investments in renewable energy projects in third countries, we have proposed a mandatory project certification, including the determination of the carbon footprint of hydrogen or its derivatives. This is a very important prerequisite also for our cross-border H2 projects. I'm sure you're happy as I am that the protracted debate about whether we need only green electrons or also molecules, this question is answered, we need both. Now it's just a matter of finding the best way to get it done. Every country that aims to make this transition will need what I call a healthy amount of realistic optimism. And Germany may need a bit more of a realistic optimism. Germany currently has a hydrogen demand of around 57 terawatt hours. Our council expects the demand to at least double at 92 to 202 terawatt hours by 2030 and increase up to 12 times up to 230 to 700 terawatt hours by 2040 for industry, transportation, energy, and heating markets. So you ask where the big gap comes from. The gap has two reasons. I mean, there's really a gap between 200 and 700 terawatt hours. The first question is, which role will hydrogen play in the decarbonization of the heating sector? And the second is what I discuss very often with Mr. Schuckert. I think we're on the same side, but there are other opinions in the council. To what extent we can expect e-fuels in our transport sector. So we have calculated this on a basis of a comprehensive meta study to find common ground about future demands. This is an important prerequisite for credible policy recommendation. Most studies out there are expecting the hydrogen demand to increase far quicker and higher compared to the government's initial plan of supply ramp up. Domestically, we are not able to cover this demand. Germany just don't have the conditions for this. The truth is we will have to import waste quantity of hydrogen as we already import other energy sources. Germany could well be importing some 65 to 100 terawatt hours of green hydrogen by 2030. And we are talking about over 300 terawatt hours of import by 2040. And it's just an average case scenario that doesn't factor the e-fuels I already mentioned. In other words, more than half of the hydrogen and almost all synthesis products we have to be sourced from abroad between 2040 and 50. We need alliances around the globe to rise that challenge. We can draw on previous cooperations between our regions and enhance them to a new level for joint efforts towards climate neutrality. For this to succeed, the global hydrogen economy has to grow quickly. As it stands, we don't have a global hydrogen market. We need three things to happen for this change. First, next to the interim solution I outlined earlier, a uniform certification system for green hydrogen is a must-have in a medium term. There will be no truly global trading without this. Second, the cost of imported hydrogen has to come down to meet the global growing demand. And third, the off-taker market, we spoke about this a couple of minutes ago, have to be addressed too. I believe international corporations is the way to do this. The electricity market has its merits order, and the hydrogen economy is also to be organized along the lines of availability and price of renewable energies. We need generation, transport, storage capacity, and use cases around the world. And we have to get as much of this as we can up and running now, both in Germany and in potential hydrogen exporting countries. Once regional hubs are established, we have to bring them together. This means connecting supply centers in the Middle East and North Africa with industrial hubs in Central Europe. Whichever way hydrogen and its derivatives find their way from MENA region to Germany in the coming decades, I do strongly believe a symbiotic relationship can develop our cooperation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking very forward to see you all tomorrow morning.